All right, awesome. Yeah, so first off, thank you, Professor Friedenberg, for inviting me. Always happy to come back to Bentley. I loved my time there, specifically with the CIS department. Learned so much and really prepared me for real life. Believe it or not, what you're doing in school is important and will translate very well when you graduate. But yeah, so my topic in tech today is technology and operational resilience in uncertain times. So before we dive in, just wanted to quickly, give more of an introduction of myself. Casey Hult, Bentley University, class of 2017. I am currently a manager in technology risk, or technology risk practice at Protiviti. I'm a global consulting firm, and I am based out of Boston. I was a CIS major with a minor in information design and corporate communication, or IDCC. I have been with Protiviti since graduation, so coming up on about 5 years now. Time truly flies, but I'm trying to think what else. I first got introduced to Protiviti at I believe it was the Beyond the Big Four networking night. I'm not sure if you guys still do that, but I spent a lot of time at career fairs and kind of jumping around to different networking events my junior and senior year. So really, through that and kind of networking with other Bentley alumni that worked at Protiviti, I ultimately landed the job and have been there ever since. Trying to think what else. I did study abroad during my time at Bentley. So I went to Australia. It was an absolutely incredible experience. If you're considering studying abroad or have already, I highly recommend it. It was absolutely fantastic. And then, yeah, overall, as I said, I loved the CIS curriculum. I, really found it super interesting. I started off as a finance major for about a semester. Quickly realized that, finance wasn't for me. I truly found technology much more interesting. And it just kind of, melded with my brain in a much better way. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. And also, if anyone on the line or, at the sandbox has questions or comments, feel free to jump in. I'm happy to pause and kind of talk through things. Want to make this as interactive as you'd like. So before we get started, so I do have a kind of fun thing. If you'd like to pull up menti.com, either on your phone or your computers, and use the code written on the screen, I can pull it up here as well. But I'd just like to get a sense of, what are you hoping to learn today? It could be about Protiviti, about technology and operational resilience, about my personal experience, anything you'd like. But sometimes it's just more fun to see the responses come up on the screen versus, putting the pressure on everyone to speak out loud. Or if you don't want to pull up Menti, you can just say it out loud as well.
Try connected on the phone here. Awesome. So what does your position exactly entail? That's a good question. Still trying to figure that out. No, I'm kidding. I'll kind of walk through that a bit throughout the presentation. How has your time at Bentley prepared you for your career? Also a great question. Your career path, all kind of key topics that I plan to walk through throughout, the presentation at this time. Yeah, anything else? Any kind of topics that anyone wants to kind of speak out loud? Oh, wow. Okay, more stuff. What course do you think prepared you the most for your current career? And then what do you see as the biggest risks in tech resiliency in the future? Awesome. Cool. So all great questions. I, hope to answer these throughout the presentation. If I don't, flag me down and I'll try to give you an answer afterwards. What are useful experiences and skills I should acquire? Cool. All right, so all great questions.
I'm going to keep going here. So just wanted to quickly touch on, Protiviti before I dive into the tech topic and what it is we actually do. So kind of the good brief overview. So Protiviti is a global consulting firm. At the highest level, we, work and partner with our clients to fix their business and technology problems. We specialize in a bunch of different areas. So you'll see on the slide here, technology, finance, business transformation and process, risk compliance, internal audit, transactional work, really kind of across the board. We hit $2 billion in revenue last year, which is a huge milestone for us. The firm's only been around for about 20 years. We operate in basically every major country kind of around the world, so a large global footprint. And we're about a team of 7,000 or so. So, relatively close to Bentley in size, which I think was one of the many reasons I was, attracted to Protiviti and to working there, just because it has that, mid-size feel where you don't really get lost in the mix of, a 20, 30,000 person firm. You get a lot of exposure at the upper management levels and really have a lot of opportunity to move up. And I would be remiss to mention that as of about 2 days ago, we just, for this, I think 7th or 8th year, made the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list for 2022. We came in 15th place, which is the highest ranking that we've had in our, firm's history. So really exciting for the company and just awesome to kind of get that recognition industry-wide. So a bit about our solution offering. So how specifically do we actually help clients? So we have 5 primary areas. The 2 areas that I have primarily been focused on during my time at Protiviti is kind of a 50-50 split between the IAFA solution here with a technology focus and the technology consulting solution. So IAFA, this is primarily your kind of IT risk and compliance, IT controls testing, Sarbanes-Oxley audits, as well as, more targeted technology audits and assessments for our clients, such as data privacy audits, disaster recovery, all with kind of a regulatory focus. So ensuring that our clients are, doing what they should be when it comes to technology and technology controls. And then the technology consulting sector, which is really kind of the focus of my presentation today, but it has several sub-solutions. So everything from, technology strategy to cybersecurity and privacy, cloud, data analytics. It's really, again, at the highest level, assisting our clients with adopting emerging technologies and IT solutions, and again, ensuring that they are compliant with various, regulatory obligations. But it's kind of the, our most rapidly growing sector. It's about, it's about a third of Protiviti's revenue this past year. So really exciting to kind of be in that space and, help out our clients with projects and engagements in this area. And I will say, there's across all of these different solutions, I am currently tagged. So you do get tagged to a solution when you join the firm. I am tagged to our IAFA technology solution. However, I've had, at the end of the day, I don't want to say it doesn't mean much, but I've had so much opportunity to work on projects and help out clients across several of these solutions. So it's been kind of nice to, get exposure to a bunch of different areas early on. It's really, if there's a need and an interest, you can absolutely be on that project. So yeah, it's a little bit about our solution offerings. Okay. Then just a quick note. So we do have a bunch of kind of diversity and employee engagement groups. Really everything from, I'm primarily involved in Get It, which is our Women in IT technology group, and then iGrow, which is, more broadly kind of a Women in the Workplace initiative. But we do have, really every kind of employee engagement group under the sun: Parents Network, Pro Pride, Veterans Network, Experienced Hire Network. This is really Since we do a lot of heavy recruiting out of campus, the experienced hire network is kind of those that join Protiviti, maybe later on in their career. So, if you're looking for a group, there's one here for you. And it's been really cool to kind of get involved with internal initiatives as well. And, we definitely encourage that. Okay. So before I dive into the technical topic, does anyone have any questions or, comments before we get in here? Okay, take silence as a no. All right, so as I mentioned, so we'll be discussing, or I'll be discussing operational and technical resilience today. So what does that actually mean? So the definition of operational resilience is really the ability of an organization to withstand adverse changes in its operating environment and to continue the delivery of business services and economic functions. So you might be thinking, this doesn't really sound very technical. This sounds more business and kind of financially oriented, and it is, but there's a lot of underlying technical topics and things that need to be in place to support this concept. And at the end of the day, kind of technology is the crux of everything that we do, both from a personal and professional and business standpoint. So it's critical for making the world go round, right? So brief history. So in the summer of 2018, kind of in response to recent, financial sector outages and growing cybersecurity concerns across the financial sector specifically, but really across, the world, right? The Bank of England, Prudential Regulation Authority that you'll see on the screen, as well as the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, both, financial regulators over in the United Kingdom, they released a discussion paper around the topic of operational resilience. And then a year later, the Singapore regulator, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, released a similar paper on technology risk management and business continuity management, essentially, giving banks and kind of large financial institutions around the world a heads up that, these are things we're going to start to look at. You better start getting organized and getting these different processes and kind of resiliency concepts in place within your organization before we start enforcing it. And implementing fines and different regulatory mandates to kind of ensure that resiliency is in place across these financial firms. But the overall objective of this concept was kind of ensuring consumer protection and overall financial stability of the global markets, whereas the old school of thought when it comes to business continuity specific to banks is the safety and soundness of the firm itself. And kind of the revenue generating functions versus the end consumer. So it really just kind of transitioned, the school of thought, in which had tons of downstream impacts, but that was kind of the high level thing. And it also added an increased focus on kind of the prioritization of end-to-end mapping of a business service. So you'll see here, there's kind of four main pillars of operational resilience. There's business resilience, cyber resilience, third party, and then technology resilience. In kind of the old world and business continuity planning and just how, financial institutions were set up. These four areas really operated in silos. And this concept of operational resilience brings them all together. So what I mean by that, business resilience is really your people. So do you have kind of the right staff in place? Are your staff dispersed geographically in an even way, so that, if you have kind of a loss of staff scenario in a country due to a natural disaster, do your other staff, globally, are they able to pick up that work, kind of that concept? Cyber resilience is, how prepared are you against cyber attacks, malicious actors, data breaches? Third party resilience is, the vendors that you rely on, whether that's technology vendors, kind of externally hosted systems. Do your resilience requirements of the firm align with the resiliency requirements of your vendors. That's a very important thing. And then lastly, technology resilience. So this is kind of thinking of like IT systems availability and data center capacity. So are your systems and critical applications that you need to sustain business functions, are they available for the business to use? So as I mentioned, previously, these four things kind of operated in separate areas. This concept has always been, around. It's just never really been thought through, or I'll say enforced rather, from kind of an end-to-end flow. So taking, your people, your processes, technology, kind of mapping out all of these things into one business flow and kind of identifying, different critical points of failure, whether that's an application that if that system goes down, kind of your entire business process can't work, whether that's a critical point of failure person. So for example, a person that's been at the firm for 30, 40 years that has all this institutional knowledge where, if they left or God forbid, weren't able to work because of a natural disaster or something like that, it would have a serious impact because they have all this knowledge that's needed. So kind of just thinking through things, from that perspective. So kind of taking a step down here to business continuity management, which is really the more kind of, I'll say, traditional way to think of what's now called operational resilience, but it's, one level down. So there's three main pillars. We have business resumption, crisis management, and disaster recovery. Just kind of a brief history of BCM. So again, the concept has existed for many years, really, as long as business has been a thing. You want to continue your business processes, but it really became more formalized, and I'll say, the 1970s or so, when the focus of BCM was really around keeping mainframes, so like those big giant computers that were in, that are well before my time, but they were in, these kind of giant rooms that needed to be environmentally controlled, and kind of looking at things like water cooling and, fire protection, really around keeping those mainframes operational. And over the years, this concept has really evolved from environmental protection of these computers to data centers to kind of incorporating, people and process continuity as well. So, while the aspect of BCM has sort of evolved, the volume and complexity, there's other things that have evolved with it. So kind of to make things more modern, really the volume and complexity of, a company's reliance on third-party vendors, think like cloud providers, that's AWS, Azure. These are all things that are, I'll say relatively new that need to start, being considered in the business continuity discussion. Also things like, scrutiny of customers, shareholders, compliance and regulatory expectations have increased significantly in the past, couple of years, as well as, expectations kind of downstream of a customer. So thinking about, the banking apps you use every day, right? Like the Citizens, the TD Banks, Santander, what have you. What kind of impact would this have on you if you can't, check your balance or pay your rent when your rent is due, or, pay your bills? It's kind of thinking through things from that perspective. And of course, thinking about kind of the thought around improbable or implausible events has evolved as well. So one of the, most prudent ones, of course, is COVID-19. I can guarantee you that, pandemic planning wasn't exactly top of mind across organizations over the past couple of years. It was part of the discussion, of course, because it was considered, an event, but I wouldn't say it was considered a probable event. So that's something that's been kind of introduced to the business continuity discussion, as well as, kind of been identified as a shortcoming in business continuity plans, over the past kind of 2 years, however long we've been living in this situation, right? So just a couple of things that, kind of come into place, and just the kind of overview of what business continuity management is and how it rolls up to this concept of operational resilience. So any questions there? I know you might be thinking like, this is cool, but what do you do? How do you implement this at your clients? So I'll get to that. So yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to provide a bit of color here. So we have, we know what business continuity is, we know what operational resilience is. Right now it's specific to financial institutions, but there's several different pillars to it and kind of multifaceted. So as I mentioned, the business resiliency aspect, third-party technology, and cyber. So there's 6 primary, I'll say, solutions or offerings that we help our clients out with in this space. The areas that I've helped out with the most are 1 and 4. So resilience assessment and maturing foundational elements. So the resilience assessment, so this is really taking stock of, kind of going into an organization, in my experience, a financial organization, a bank, taking stock of their different processes. So what kind of, policies, as standards, operating procedures do they have set up, to address these different scenarios? Do they have business continuity plans? Do they have a business continuity department even? Kind of, asking various questions. And of course, it's more detailed than that, but really just, taking stock of where they stand today and assessing that against different, frameworks and industry standards, and kind of identifying, where the gaps might be. And then beyond that, kind of skipping towards number 4 here. So this is really where I've primarily operated as of lately. So kind of addressing, identified deficiencies or gaps, whether that's by a regulator or their internal audit function, in the concepts or pillars of business, cyber, third party, and technology resilience, and kind of helping our clients work through that and get their processes and program up to par with what a regulator would expect. So just to touch on a recent project of mine, it's for a very large global financial institution. They received some regulatory guidance to kind of revamp their entire business continuity and resilience program to meet, as I mentioned, certain industry standards, operational resiliency standards. And this was, everything from top level governance. So what kind of leadership and organizational structure do they have in place, down to, what was written in the actual business continuity and resiliency plans. Massive effort, massive organization. They called up Protiviti to assist with just the technology work stream because this was across the whole bank, right? And we were just assisting with the technology work stream, which that work stream alone was, 50,000 or so employees. So that's 50,000 people working on just technology at a bank, which is larger than most companies. So just to give you a sense of, the scale and kind of the task we were up against. So again, the overall task was really to kind of inventory and evaluate the current state of their technology resiliency capabilities, kind of rationalize that and roadmap, the effort to a state that regulators and, internal audit and different kind of authoritative bodies would be happy with from a quality standpoint. So, more granularly, kind of on a day-to-day basis, the things that I was doing was, interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people across the technology teams, kind of asking the questions, first and foremost, what do you do? What are you responsible for? Kind of what do you do day to day? What are the assets that you rely on? So assets meaning people, staff, applications, any third-party vendors that are critical, and kind of just gathering all of this information, talking through things with them, such as, if you lost or if XYZ application was down, what kind of impact would this have on the service that you're providing to the business? And really just asking questions around that to kind of gather data to formalize their business resiliency plans for them. And then finally, really kind of taking all this information and putting it into the new resilient system of record that they were in the process of developing as well, which is really cool because you kind of got to go through, the whole systems development life cycle, kind of from the outside because I wasn't involved in the development, but really was cool to kind of have that parallel thing happening. And then beyond that, once we kind of got through interviewing and speaking to all of these pretty technical teams and technical folks, kind of taking stock of where all of their staff was dispersed geographically. So, I was working with teams in India, and Japan, Australia, the United Kingdom. So a lot of early morning and late night calls to accommodate their different time zones, but it was really cool to kind of, collaborate with the different teams globally. And again, kind of looking at how the staff for these technology teams was distributed. So, kind of analyzing concentration risk, right? So if you had 80% of a certain technology team that's supporting these business critical applications in India, and the other 20%, is here in Boston, for example, that presents a concentration risk scenario. So, if you lost your staff in India for a temporary period of time, whether that's, due to their cyclone season or, some other reason, is your other 20% able to pick up the work that your 80% isn't able to do? So it's really just doing, that's, kind of oversimplifying it, but kind of doing data analysis around that geographic disbursement and presenting those findings, which downstream, I'm sure will initiate some discussions around, hey, maybe we should kind of hire more people in Boston, or, make an investment to hire more people in another region, or, ultimately accept the risk because management might deem it okay, so those are some of the kind of day-to-day things I've been working on. Again, a lot of interviewing, but I think one of the things I love about this type of work specifically is that, you kind of understand the concepts of BCM, op resilience, et cetera, but you get to learn so much about really just how, a financial institution or just technology teams work. So because you're interviewing people day in and day out for this particular engagement, I've just learned a ton about, how kind of what they do, right? Which has helped my knowledge immensely. And that applies across not just banks, right? Like BCM, is a multi kind of industry concept. So when we're on these types of projects, you really learn a lot about, what the company does, how they make money, just as a byproduct of helping them implement these and draft these business continuity plans. So I'll pause there. Any questions at this point or comments? That was probably a lot to digest at once. Okay.
Any questions or comments so far?
Do I just copy this?
So this is what you've done for the current assignment.
Okay, Casey, keep going.
So one additional note I wanted to make, so something that, I personally think is really cool, might be kind of nerdy, but it's fine. So Protiviti is a primary partner with SIFMA. So SIFMA is the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association. So they're basically a, centralized trade association for, investment banks, things like that. And I'm realizing it's kind of ironic how, I was a finance major for like a semester, didn't love it, and now I'm working, basically in finance, but doing technology specific things. But that's just a tangent. But basically, so SIFMA, every other year they hold a cybersecurity tabletop simulation exercise called Quantum Dawn. And what this is they bring in representatives from different financial institutions, regulatory bodies, central banks, law enforcement, government, kind of crisis management across the board. And they, talk them through and respond to a simulated cyber attack, kind of a coordinated cyber attack on the global financial sector, and practice, how they would coordinate. So it's really like, Bank A saying, hey, regulator XYZ, we just experienced kind of a ransomware attack. Is anybody else experiencing this? And then Bank B will come in and say, hey, we also experienced this. And it's, again, oversimplifying it, but that's kind of the essence of the coordination and kind of, different entities working together to respond as a unit. So the scenario this past year was an attack on a major global bank's kind of custody systems and infrastructure. So this ultimately, simulated but caused a disruption on the trading system that they use to process and settle trades. And the attacker requested a ransom demand of, I think, 200 million, like $100 million, something like that, in Bitcoin, and they wanted it in 24 hours, or else, something bad was going to happen. And, the focus of this exercise is really a nod to the fact that, ransomware attacks are up significantly within the past year. I think around, 90 to 95%. So this, allowed the different kind of parties involved in the discussion to talk through, what are the key decisions that we would need to make during a ransomware attack? Who are our internal and external key points of contact that we would pick up the phone and call? What kind of communication lines do we have to regulators, to the media? How would we respond to this in a coordinated way? And then ultimately, do we pay the ransom? Is there any guidance around that? How do we avoid that? Kind of things of that nature. And I would say the biggest takeaway from this exercise this past fall was that, the importance of having a, joint partnership between the industry, so banks as well as government and regulatory agencies, is crucial, kind of sharing that information. And really, kind of at the highest level, that firm should continually test their crisis management, incident response, data recovery plans, and as well as ensuring that they have a plan for ransomware and that they have, cyber insurance, things like that. So again, it's quote unquote fake or simulated, but it's really interesting to kind of be a part of this and sit in and hear, what these different financial organizations would do in a situation like this. And I put, if anyone's interested, like I am, I put the website just so you can go in and, read the after action report that Protiviti put together and kind of learn more about it. I think it's really cool. Okay. So that about does it for me in terms of, my technical topic. Where Protiviti itself is on every social media. I put our campus recruiter, Kira, her email down at the bottom if anyone's interested. I'll also put my email in the chat if anyone has questions or, wants to chat further with me. I know I have to wrap things up here for Sebastian, but just wanted to, thank everyone for your time. I'll, give a minute or two here if anyone has any questions or things they, want to learn more about.